The times they are changing, and the stereotype of the Aussie consumer as being big spenders who love a beer, a smoke and a flutter is outdated, according to the Bureau of Statistics. Their latest data on spending trends paints a very different picture. Now we're more likely to save than spend. We prefer to stay in than go out, and we choose quality over quantity when it comes to alcohol. Craig James is Chief Economist with CommSec, and he joins me now. So, Craig James, you've had a good look at these numbers, and this new Aussie consumer is much more cautious, more prudent and healthier. So is this just down to the shock of the GFC, or is there more to it than that?
I think there's a little bit more to it than that. These trends have been happening for quite some time. I think the messages are getting through to Aussie consumers that you do need to save a little bit more for a rainy day, to spend less, to keep some in reserves. But certainly the global financial crisis, the natural disasters, things like Japanese, the New Zealand earthquake have taken their toll, and more recently home prices are falling rather than rising. So people do need to go back to perhaps a little bit more conservative times, something like we used to see back in the 1950s or 60s.
Let's look more closely at the details then, Craig. Spending growth has slowed. We tend to pay for things outright rather than use credit. We drink and smoke less. We're spending less money on essentials. One of the details of that is that 50 years ago, 41% of our spending would go on food, clothing, alcohol and cigarettes. Today it's just 18%. Why that sharp decline?
Well, in large part, we are richer. You know, we have seen our income levels and wealth levels rise over time. So so-called essentials are taking up less of a share of our budget. You go back 50 years ago and essentials would take out 40 cents of our spending dollar. Now it's around about 20 cents in the dollar. We are spending more in terms of recreation, TVs, cameras and the like, sporting equipment. They're the key hot button areas for the Australian consumer nowadays, and it's actually replaced things like mobile phones and the internet. It's more our home entertainment which is king at present.
That's right. You mentioned that mobile phones and internet. The share of spending on mobile phones and internet has fallen over the past 5 years, and we're also using public transport more than our own cars. That's interesting because the impression is exactly the opposite.
Yes, well, I suppose this may be a trend coming through with Generation Y. Generation Y wants to live closer to their place of employment, closer to the entertainment type venues. Less of them are taking up driving a car. More of them are living close to the cities, and therefore they're using public transport instead. And of course, a lot of us are travelling by plane nowadays. Then we wouldn't have seen that 10, 15, 20 years ago. The cheap cost of air travel has brought that within reach of everyone. And even last month, there was something like 700,000 Australians travelled overseas. That's up in the order of 25% compared with a year ago. That's just an amazing performance.
Craig James, thank you.
Thank you.